So, hi everyone, I am Carolina Andonia. I am a postdoc here at MPE. I thought that I would like to give a tutorial on spectral energy distribution template fitting, which has come up a lot during the talks today, yesterday, and I assume the end of the week. I mostly work with Fortesfield, which is an SED fitting code, which is not very user-friendly. So instead of doing a tutorial to learn how to use a particular SED fitting code, I figured that I was going to give like a review of what is SED fitting. I don't have any preferred SED fitting code, but the most important, in my opinion, to do SED fitting is understand what are the limitations, understand what are the models, and understand the photometry. And once we know that, we can go to any SED fitting code that is on GitHub and use it, right? So also Johannes on Thursday is going to give a tutorial of how to use Grass. This is his SED fitting code. So I assume that that will be much more interactive. But I don't, well, if I prepare slides, so it's gonna be like a talk, but please interrupt me if you have questions. I don't want to make it boring. Okay, so what is SED fitting? So basically SED fitting is a technique to derive the physical properties of IGN and galaxies, or well, any stars, but in this case it's IGN and galaxies, by comparing the observed photometry with models. And we typically do it in the flux space, but I know that there are some codes that are also SED fitting in the magnitude space. So SED fitting is important for several reasons. First, it allows us to disentangle the different physical components that contribute to the overall emission of a galaxy, like AGN emission versus star formation emission. It can be used then to calculate the physical properties of AGN and galaxies, as the AGN luminosity, accretion disk luminosity, stellar masses, star formation rate, but also if we want to go into more detail, it can be the dust temperature, etc. And for us, or at least for me, I use it in particular to identify agents that cannot be necessarily identified in one single photometric band. Maybe a source doesn't look like an IGN in the X-rays, or well, detected in the X-ray is an IGN, but maybe only in the optical or in a few infrared bands. But if I have the entire information from the UV to the far infrared, actually I can identify an IGN. So how does the SED of an IGN look like? Mostly when we talk about the SED fitting, in case of IGNs, we mostly refer to the X-rays, to the mid-infrared. So this is a very classic video that I am sure that you have seen before. I cannot press pause, but the thing is that the AGN emits in all the wavelengths. Of course, that emits strongly in the X-ray band, in the soft X-ray band, optical, and mid-infrared. We know that in the optical, we are mostly seeing the emission coming from the accretion disk, and in the mid-infrared, we are mostly seeing the emission coming from the dusty source. And depending on what is the AGN fraction, so how strong or how bright is the AGN compared to the host galaxy, it will be easier to identify, but also if this IGN is obscure, we are not probably gonna be able to observe it in the X-rays or in the optical. And we, in the optical in particular, we might mostly observe the host galaxy. But in the mid-infrared, typically, we always can observe the dusty torus emission. So basically, how does the real AGN SED look like? It's just a collection of points that we have to join with a superposition of models, right? And as any fitting technique, different models can reproduce. With different models, we can reach the same result. So it's very important to understand, to use all the information that we know about the sources to model the SED, right? In this case, this is a nice SED. It's not like that in the majority of the cases because, yeah, we have a lot of photometric points from the UV to the far infrared, so we can actually properly constrain the different components of the SED. So basically, the Galaxy SED physical component is mostly 4. In the UV, we have the accretion disk, we have the unobscured stellar population emission, and then in the infrared, we have the dusty torus, which would be the emission of the nuclear dust, and then in the far infrared, the emission of the dust that is in the host galaxy. So now I will give like a review more or less of the different components. So we know that the stellar emission mostly dominates the SED in the UV and in infrared band, so between 0.1 and 3 microns, more or less. And the stellar emission is basically is the integrated emission of all the stars of the galaxy that have different ages, different metallicities, different masses. And we have to use stellar population synthesis models to extract the physical, to convert these UV or optical emission to and extract the physical properties of the host galaxy. And there are a lot of parameters that we need to give as an input to this stellar population synthesis model to obtain to model the stellar emission. First, only to model a simple stellar population, which is basically a bunch of stars that were born at the same time and have the same metallicity, we need to assume an IMF, an initial mass function. We need to take into account the isochrons, which model how the stars evolve with time, and of course the stellar spectrum. And then we need to take into account the star formation history and the chemical enrichment evolution over time of the galaxy to model the complex stellar population, because the simple stellar population model is an idealization because we know that the stars were not born at the same time. And when we combine all this, we have the SED of the stellar population, which is shown in blue. But at the same time, we know that the galaxy has some dust. So there will be some dust that is also going to absorb this UV emission coming from the star and re-emit it in larger wavelengths. So we need to take all this into account to model the stellar populations. So basically to obtain the stellar mass value of the galaxy, which is what we are most interested in. So there are a lot of variables. And it is, even though the most usual stellar population synthesis model used in general is the Russell and Charlotte 2003, we can still assume set different priors when we use this model. So using the same model, if we assume different star formation histories, different IMF, different metallicities, we can obtain completely different stellar masses. So we need to be careful. So as I say, the emission, the UV optical emission coming from the stars is then absorbed by the dust that is in the interstellar medium and re-emitted as thermal radiation in the mid-infrared and in the far infrared. And this is more or less how it looks like the SED of what we call dark obscured star formation. So in the UV, more or less, we can observe the unobscured stellar population, while in the infrared, we observe the dust obscured star formation, right? Where it is basically 2 components. We have the very cold dust component, which is in the very far infrared, that mostly Herschel tracks, and more or less in the mid-infrared, we have the warm dust. And here is problematic because we know that the dusty torus also emits at this wavelength. So around here is one of the key wavelengths or wavebands to disentangle the AGN from the dusty torus. And there are a number of physically motivated and empirical dose emission models to model the star formation. And here it will depend on what you want to constrain, which one is the best model. Some empirical models only have a J parameter, which is able to model all the different observed star formation SEDs. But if you want to know what is the temperature of the dust or the different sizes of the dust grains, etc. There are much more complex models that have much more free parameters. But to be able to fit those models, we also need more photometric points. So that will depend on the data and the data you have. Then we have the accretion disk model, which is one of the simplest models because it is just, in most of the cases, we assume a thin accretion disk where the SED is approximated by with a sum of black bodies, which follow a disk temperature. So in this case, it's just a shape, like a single shape parameter, which is affected by dust reddening. But we cannot model all the agents. Like if we know that these are super Eddington accretion, for example, we know that accretion disk is not a thin disk anymore, and we cannot use the classic big blue bump or the Gordon-Richards model to model the accretion disk. So we also have to be careful with it. And then we have the dusty torus, the circumnuclear dust that we typically model as the dusty torus plus this polar dust component that for the last 10 or 15 years we know that exists. And the torus SED will depend in different things, if we include this polar dust or not, if we are modeling the dusty torus as with a smooth or clumpy, the inclination angle, the optical depth, etc. So for example, here you can see how the torus SED, well, when I say torus, I also include the polar dust. Let's say circumnuclear dust model changes with the inclination angle and also with the optical depth. And it changes quite a lot. And as always, there are very many IEN models, and we have empirical models, we have theoretical models, and their shape is not really always the same. So depending on which IEN model we assume, we are also gonna get different results. And there are some models like this one, which is the red, which assumes that the AEN is able to heat up very cold gas, which is very far away in the galaxy. So if you fit your AEN SED with like the, I don't know, the black model, and with the red model, you are going to get completely different things. Like if I feed my AEN SED with the black model, the star formation is going to feed this other part. But if I feed it with a very cold SED, actually I am going to get less star formation. So I can even get that in one SED modeling, I might identify an AEN, and in the other one, I might not, because the models are very different. So again, SED fitting, it is very model dependent. So we need to be really careful with the models that we use to fit the models and not, to fit the data and not overinterpret our results. So if we come back to how the AEN SED looks like, in a good case where we have a lot of data, we are able to have like a very nice model of our galaxy, right? We can properly model the star formation, the torus, the accretion disk, etc. But in the majority of the cases, that is not the reality. In the majority of the cases, we just have upper limits. We don't have a lot of photometry, and we have huge uncertainties. And we are not able really to say much about it. And here, well, I will talk about this later, but here is very important what SED fitting code we use, because there are some SED fitting codes that only apply grid interpolation, and they will just give you like a number with error bars, but well, there are other SED fitting codes that will give you the entire posterior distribution, so you can actually see how large are your errors, and etc. Okay, so as I mentioned before, the SED fitting has very many limitations, and one of them is that it is very model dependent. So for example, here, the left plot shows two examples of AEN SED. So we have the accretion disk plus the torus, and here the galaxy SEDs with the unobscured stellar population plus the dust obscured star formation. So we can see that the accretion disk SED of a blue quasar, so when the reddening is basically 0, is very similar to the SED of a young stellar population. And then the accretion disk SED of a red quasar is very similar to the accretion disk SED of an old stellar population. So again, there is a lot of degeneracy. So I might be misidentifying, like, for example, a blue quasar with a very young stellar population. So it is important to use the information that we have of the sources to perform the SED fitting. So for example, if we know that my AEN is very luminous because we have the extra information of the AEN. The stellar population cannot be too young because the AEN needed some time to grow, for example. So I can place some constraints or the lower limit of the age of the stellar population. So I won't get a solution where I am modeling a very young AEN and maybe actually the UV optical part is actually showing the accretion disk, for example. The same with the far infrared. If I am picking using a very cold AEN SED, if my SED fitting decides to fit the far infrared with a very cold AEN SED, the star formation rate will be very low. But if it is in the other way around, if it decides to fit the far infrared with a very strong star formation, then the AEN component will be very low. So which one is the correct one? It's very hard to tell. You have to, it will, like you have to trust in your SED fitting models, but at the same time, it is very good to visualize like the models, like, does this make sense? Like my SED fitting code is fitting the far infrared with like a starburst galaxy of 3,000 solar masses per year. Does that make sense or not? Like something. Now, we can do stuff to improve the SED fitting process. And now with pretty much all the SED fitting codes, you can do this. And is use the multivariate information that we know of the sources as a priors, right? So for example, if we are fitting a sample of X-ray sources, we know that there is a correlation between the intrinsic X-ray luminosity and the 2,500 Armstrong luminosity. So I can use this information as a prior in my SED fitting process to improve the constraints of the accretion disk. Now, what is the limitation of this? Of course, we need the intrinsic X-ray luminosity. So we need some X-ray spectral constraints of the sources. But even if we only have the observed X-ray luminosity, that can at least help us to set a lower limit of what would be the accretion disk luminosity, right? Also, scattering relationships that we talk about this in the morning. If I know the black hole mass of my sources, I can also set a prior in the stellar masses of my source, so I can improve the stellar population modeling. Now we also have to be careful with priors, right? Because these relationships have some scatter. So I can set, I don't know, a Gaussian prior, for example. I don't have to tell the SED fitting code like the stellar mass is this. But I can give you some freedom, but still guide the code to improve the constraints. And I can use all other information that we know. For example, if we have the radio, we can use the far infrared to radio correlation to place some lower limits in what is the star formation luminosity of my source. Or if I know, also with the X-ray, I could use the X-ray to mid-infrared luminosity relationship to place some constraints on the torus luminosity, etc. So now the recipe to perform the SED fitting codes, to perform SED fitting, the first is, of course, pick your SED fitting code. And there are many SED fitting codes. If you want to, there is this paper, Pacifici et al. 2023, where they compare like 16 different SED fitting codes, and they describe each SED fitting code, etc. So which one you want to pick, it will really depend on what do you want to calculate, right? And how many sources you have. If you're analyzing one source in the local universe and you have 40 photometric points, yeah, you might want to model your source, a very complex model, many free parameters, maybe a Bayesian SED fitting code, etc. But if you are fitting 100,000 sources, you cannot feed each source in 30 minutes, right? So you might want to use a grid interpolation code that might give you the result in 30 seconds. I don't know. So it will really depend. There are also different SED fitting codes have different flexibility. So for example, FortesFit, which is the one I use, has too much flexibility, so the user pretty much has to do everything. But I basically can use the model I want. I just need to incorporate it in the code and I use it. IEnFitter, I know that they have some fixed models for each component, so you have to use the ones that they have registered there. Now there is IEnFitter RX, where they also include the alpha OX, so the relationship between the X-ray and the accretion disluminosity in the as a prior, and they also include the radio photometry. We have GRASS, which is the code of Johannes Buchner that he is going to give a tutorial about it on Thursday, etc. And there are some SED-fitting codes that are meant only to calculate photometric redshift, for example. So we cannot use it to calculate the stellar masses of the sources because they were not made for that. And different SED-fitting codes give different results. Like this is a plot for the same paper that I mentioned before, where they fitted the same sample with all these different SED fitting codes, and they are really not getting the same result because some SED fitting codes maybe don't incorporate the AGN to calculate the stellar masses, or they use different models, etc. So again, we need to be careful. In particular, when we are maybe working with catalogs and we are using the result of catalogs and we are comparing, we need to really understand what models were used to feed the sources, right? Of course, that then we need to compile the photometry. And this also will depend on what we want to know from the galaxy, right? If we want to calculate the stellar mass, of course that we need to get all the UV and optical photometry. We cannot calculate the stellar mass only with the mini-infrared, for example. If we want to properly calculate the star formation rate of the sources, we need Herschel ideally. I have seen many papers that they just use the unobscured, so the stellar population models to calculate the star formation rate, but in obscured sources, and when I say mean obscure, I don't mean only obscure again, but also when there is a lot of star formation, these might be very underpredicted. Like the star formation rate that you will get from the stellar population models will be quite underpredicted because most of the emission was absorbed by the interstellar dust. So in this case, we should go to Herschel. And well, then, as I mentioned before, you need to pick your models, and it is important to understand what are the limitations of the different models and what I want to calculate, right? Because there are so many models. How extreme are your sources? Because there are sources that are very extreme that cannot be modeled with a standard torus SED, etc. And also the initial parameters, it is very important, as I said before. Like if I know that my source cannot be, the stellar cannot be very young, I can place some limits in the age of the stellar population, for example. If I know the X-ray information, I can use the alpha OX parameter to improve the modeling of the accretion disk, etc. So yeah, this is it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to.
So it's more about this paper with the comparison of the codes. So I guess they are using like real observational data. Like, wouldn't it be interesting to maybe use some mock data so that we can know the parameters to then compare?
Yeah, actually that is what Johannes said when I was talking with him about this. They don't have like a ground truth. They did not feed the mock data to know which SED fitting code performed better. They just, yeah.
At the same time, if your mock data made with a model, and if you fit it with the same model, you will get better results than if you fit it with another model. So you have to, yeah,
To track.
yeah, make it fail.
Yes, that is a good point. But I do agree that maybe it was not the goal of the paper, but a good exercise would be to have like a mock catalog of galaxies and see which the city fitting code performs better.
I have a question about energy conservation. I know that some code have either an option or they implement some energy conservation between the absorbed emission in the UV, optical UV, and the one that is remitted. Is this some common practice? What are pros and cons?
So I know that
that.
Cigale, for example, they implemented it. I think that it kind of depends. I think that if you are only fitting a galaxy, it's very important because you only have one process happening. So you don't have an AGN. You only have the stellar population. So it is very important to implement the energy balance because you know that all the far infrared emission, for example, is coming from the UV emission that was re-emitted. But if you have an AGN, my understanding is that maybe it's not so fundamental to do it because you have different components contributing to the galaxy. So yeah, I don't know. In the case of the AGNs, maybe you can have some components that is coming from outflows, or I don't know, that don't work necessarily with energy balance. So yeah, I think that other codes, I don't know if Grasp, I don't know if some of the authors of Graph can say something. I think that, Eduardo, you told me that the new version of, what is the name? Ariane Fitter has energy balance, because I think that most of the Bayesian, on and off. I don't know if you can do Bayesian and energy balance at the same time, because the point of the Bayesian is that you fit the different components and then you calculate the probability of the best result. I don't know how you could compare.
Yeah, I mean, you put one more constraint, there is more rigidity, so if
maybe.
you don't properly fit
I
it.
don't know.
But at least, yeah.
But that is what I understanding on the energy balance situation. If you only, it is to be applied if you are only fitting a galaxy, but when you have the AGN component, I think that it may be.
Can any of these SED fittings tell you, if you do your fitting, that maybe there's likely an outflow or maybe an unresolved merger? You don't see, but it tells you there's a merger.
A merger, I doubt it. I mean, outflow, I also doubt it. I mean, I guess that more than the SED fitting, I would say that is a photometry, the issue, because some filters are very broad. So in the UV optical, there are some instruments that have very narrow filters where you can maybe not resolve a line, but identify a line, right? But in the mid-infrared, the filters are super broad, so you cannot really identify an outflow. Now, what some people have done, so if we come back to this model, so some people, I think that one of the explanation of this polar dust is that is driven by outflows, right? So if we go to the Stalevsky model, I think that it was in the paper of Gaby Calistro Rivera in 2021 or something like that, then she found that there was a population of AGN that was slightly colder in the mid-infrared, or they interpret that as an outflow. I don't think that only from one SED you can tell if there is an outflow or not. But if you are comparing different populations and maybe one population for some reason has some feature in some particular waveband, maybe you can, but only from a set of points, I don't think.
Thanks, Caro, for the. So I have a question that maybe is a bit specific. So with the some and now many of the sources identified with WST as AGN, they have peculiar feature in their SED. So you might expect to have a blue star component and the red AGN component, but then they seems to lack the torus emission. Then you can imagine the opposite, so red and blue AGN, etc. And these components and these sources seems to be hard to fit with the standard AGN templates or AGN modules of Cigalo with templates of AGN. In your opinion, which is the most flexible code that can attempt the fitting of this kind of sources?
That is a good question. I mean, I think that the most flexible code would be a code that allows you to use the model you want. I am not sure about all the different codes. And now the one that I use for the seed allows you to use the models you want. The thing is you need to write the Python module to read the code. That is the complexity. So I think that the question is not what SCD fitting code to use, but is what models. Once you know the models, then you can, I don't know, even adapt some SCD fitting codes to the model you want, but I think that is the problem. And in my opinion, with the little red dots is complicated because, for example, they don't have dust. So the typical IEN, they are supposed to be dust free. So the typical IEN SCD, you cannot use it because you won't observe you won't see the torus because there is no torus. And in the case of the stellar population, I think that is also complicated because we know that the mass to light ratio evolved with redshift and that is very high redshift. I am not sure if the assumption that this stellar population synthesis model used to calculate stellar mass, that convert the luminosity using some radio to stellar mass, can be used in those particular conditions and in those particular redshift. I don't know, I haven't read in detail the paper, so I don't know how they are setting up the SCD fitting. And I don't know what code are they using.
So currently most of the work use Orsigal side, but this problem, I think that it uses not standard templates, but modules of standard AGN. So as you show, so vision disk and the torus. Then if something changes, Orsigal has some problems in CD of these sources. Other codes use, I think, AGN Fitter, I suppose, or Prospector AGN. That is another that is becoming more and more common.
So my particular problem with Cigale, when you're analyzing individual sources, is that because it does template interpolation, the errors are always very small. And that is not realistic all the time. If you have the full posterior distribution, maybe you will have huge error bars, but that is the only, that it is what it is. It is the reality, right? So I don't know, I assume that IEN Fitter should be a much better tool than Cigale.
Another quick question, do you know codes that can fit both spectroscopy and photometry together?
Oh, I heard something about it, but I don't know. That would be very cool.
For example, with bagpipes, you can do it, or with other spectral fitting codes.
Okay.
That is only
Some of them you might have to implement the AGN template yourself, so I'm quite sure.
okay.
So, quick question, do any of the codes, as far as you know, incorporate scatter light for the AGN as one of the models? So like, it's very challenging to fit very, very obscured quasars. Part of the reason because a lot of the UV and optical light is actually scattered AGN light. And so, typically the prediction for like stellar masses are usually quite large because you basically associate a lot of that light with stellar light, but in reality, it's like 10% of the very luminous quasar that gets scattered, and that's what you use as UV and optical. Are there any codes that you're aware that kind of take that effect into account?
No, unfortunately not. Actually, I work with obscure quasars, and I just assume that all the UV emission is coming from there.
RASP, the SCD fitting algorithm of Johannes, is supposed to do better job at fitting AGN, notably not overestimating the stellar mass.
But in this case of spirit sources?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, maybe you can talk with Vanessa about it. Okay. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.